The math on the new enhanced ACT is not the easiest. So what we're doing in this video is this is a full walkthrough of practice test 2 that's been released on the ACT website. We will link it below, but this video is to guide you as you go step by step through these math problems and hopefully improve your ACT score. Hi, I'm Rebecca Beard. I own Niceville Tutoring, which we cover subjects K through 12 with an emphasis on test prep. We have over 45 teachers on staff who support students online and in person. If you're looking for some support, we have our link in the description below, and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with study tips and tricks. Why trust me? I own a test prep and tutoring company, and I am actively taking this test in about less than 2 weeks. So this video is for you. It's also a little bit for me, but enjoy, get out that calculator, and let's get to work. Okay, so we will be starting from number 1. This is a printout from the ACT website, just so that you can more easily see it. And just a reminder, you can access it at the link below. Okay, so it's going to go from easy to medium to hard. So at a college track meet, there are 3 jumping events, and you've got a lot of fluff here. The Venn diagram shows the distribution of the number of athletes competing in each jumping event. How many athletes are competing in both high jump and triple jump, but not long jump? So if we look at our picture here, just a reminder, I know it's been a while since you've done Venn diagrams, but what you are looking for is both high jump and triple jump, which are both right here, but not long jump. So it's actually pretty straightforward. The answer is 3, and hopefully you got that right. So all you have to do on item number 2 for this question is you pretty much have to plug it into your calculator. I will try to show pieces of my calculator, but sometimes the auto zoom gets a little bit crazy with it. So a function f is defined by the equation f of x equals x squared plus 5. What is f of 3 plus 1? So if you plug in that 3 into your calculator, what this is going to look like is 3 squared plus 5, which is going to be 9 plus 5, which equals to 14. And then you've got to add this little bonus plus 1. And so the answer is pretty simple. The answer is D, 15. Okay, for number 3, given B equals 40 and C equals negative 16, B plus C is equal to the product of negative 4 and what number? So honestly, this is a little bit of a riddle, but it's not too bad. So let's start here. B plus C. So we've got 40 plus negative 16, which translates to 40 minus 16, which is in turn going to equal 24. And then it says is equal to the product of negative 4, I'll box it over here, and what number, which would be x. So you can technically solve for x. I'm a person that eyeballs it, and so since this is positive over here with this 24, you have a negative, so you need a negative 6. So the answer is B. So nice and easy, but if you don't read it closely, it is easy to mess up. So on number 4, it takes Colin 24 minutes to walk to school in the morning. What fraction of his 24-hour day is spent walking to school in the morning? So let's look through this one. You have a couple of different ways you can do this, but the key is you have minutes over here and hours over there. So let's go 24 hours and convert it to minutes, which you probably know is there's 60 minutes hours. So you just go times 60. And so what that would be is 24 times 60 equals 1440. But he is walking 24 minutes. So let's do 24. Gonna box this over here. You can simplify. All you have to do is you go 1440 divided by 24, and that's going to be 60. So it'll be 1 over 60. So the answer is B. Okay, we've got some geometry now. So question number 5, a certain triangle has an interior angle measures of 6x, 2x, and x. And remember, all the degrees in a triangle add up to 180. So what is the value of x? So all you have to do is you go 6x plus 2x plus x equals 180. And then that right there, all added together, is going to be 9x equals 180. X equals 20. Check. I'm doing this in my head, but I'd rather Yep, good. C is 20. Okay, number 6 is matrices. And a lot of people freak out with these, but they're actually not that bad. So what you have to do with this to get this equal to one of these down here is actually you just distribute the 6 by multiplication. And so the answer on this one is D. Not much to explain there. There is matrice programs in your calculator, but for like stuff like this, I don't think it's super necessary. Okay, so now we are starting to get a little ugly on negatives on number 7. So back up just a little bit. So for circle O, you've got A, B, C, D. You kind of want to practice on skimming these questions and not reading them too closely for the sake of time. A and B are far as possible. C is halfway between A and B alongside O, and D is halfway between C and B. What percent area is enclosed by circle O by OC, OD, and minor arc CD? So let's go ahead and kind of break this down. So what our goal is, and that's what we want to, is enclosed by OC, OD, and minor arc CD. So what their goal is, they want to figure out the percent right here. And then what you have to look at there is you got to do some calculations. So A and B are far as possible. So this right here, like this is about 50%, or pretty much is 50%. So we're kind of breaking it down. So if we're looking for this, it is automatically not going to be 100% and it's not going to be 50%. So you've eliminated 2 options there. And then C is halfway between A and B. So this whole thing is 25%. So the only logical answer is going to be A. Okay, and then number 8, an object launched vertically at 30 meters per second from a 55-meter tall platform. You've got the height right there with a formula that they give, and this is really straightforward. So what will be the height in the object 3 seconds after launch? These ones I can promise you is going to be on the test, but this is like a plug and chug. So you just have to plug this one into your calculator. So if you, all you have to do is you go down to 3.9 or 4.9, and then you go 3 squared plus 30 times 3 plus 55. And then you let your calculator do all the work for you. I am going to try to keep my calculator off screen because it seems to make the autofocus a little bit crazy on the stock cam. And so when you enter it all in, you should get 100.9. Okay, I didn't yell at me too much trying to show you guys that work. I love these ones. They are literally just a plug and go. Okay, so number 9, given that the function is this, which of the following expressions is equivalent to f of x? So you could make it difficult and just literally like factor this out, but it's going to take a while. So what I would do is you got to remember the principles of FOIL. It's first, outer, inner, and then last. So what you have to think through there is your last 2 terms have to equal positive 12. And then your first 2 terms have to equal positive 4x squared. So because there's a negative here and not a negative here in A is gone. And then that can make a positive. C would make a negative 12. And then also D would make a negative 12. So the answer is B. Try not to make things more complicated than they need to be. Okay, on number 10, which of the following is equivalent to 6x plus 3y minus y minus 2x? And the main error I see with these is people not distributing the negative side. So you have to make sure you distribute and pretend this is a negative 1 going here and here. So you go 6x plus 3y minus y, and that would be a plus 2x, combined like terms. So that would be an 8x, and then plus 2y. And the answer is going to be D. As you're going to see, we are going to be moving through these problems a lot faster in the beginning, and then we are going to slow down, and that is actually how you are going to take the test. You are going to do some problems faster than others. Okay, so this is the first problem where I feel like it's getting slightly harder. I want to say hard, but slightly harder. So Bryce owns an apartment building. He charges $325 per month for each 1-bedroom apartment and $410 per month for each 2-bedroom. Bryce charged a total of $4,905 in rent for 13 apartments this month. How many 1-bedroom apartments did Bryce charge this month? So let's go ahead and knock this out. So what I'm seeing is a lot of stuff. You have prices, and then you have a total of 13 apartments. And so what this tells me is I need 2 equations. So I go x
plus y equals 13. And the way I would define it is x equals a 1 bed and y equals a 2 bed. And then there's a total of 13. Now we have to get into the numbers. So 325, which is a really good price for an apartment, plus 410 for the 2-bedroom equals the total of 4905. And what I think is easiest on this is to solve this with substitution. So our goal is to solve for the x. So what we need to do is set stuff equal to y. So all you have to do is you move around this problem and you go y equals 13 minus x, and we're going to go ahead and plug that in. So we go 325x plus 410. 13 minus x equals 4905. And then you're going to go ahead and simplify 325x plus, that would be 5330 minus 410x 905. So this just takes a couple minutes, but it's not too bad. So 325 minus 410 minus 85x, and then you're going to make sure to simplify this side. 4905 minus 5330 equals negative 425. And so x for the 1-bedroom is going to equal 5, which is going to equal a. That one was a lot more work. It wasn't super hard, and it's more of an Algebra 1 principle, but you have to be able to recognize when you need two equations. Now, I've asked students before, if you see any way simpler to solve this, I'm all ears, but I have not found a faster way to do this one yet. So what these are, whenever I see a chart like this, I'm going to move this into view a little bit, is there's a lot of fluff, and so I'm going to ignore that for a second. But what, or to the nearest 1%, what percent of customers who responded to the survey like hamburgers? So there's a total of 312. And then 195 like hamburgers. And so all you have to do is you go 195 divided by 312. And then that is going to be about 62.5%, which is going to make this answer 63. Okay, so for number 13, what value of n does the quadratic equation have solutions of x equals 7 and x equals negative 3? And when I was doing this on my school group, which was like a live coaching group, this one kind of threw people through a loop, but it's actually not as bad as you think. And once I explained it, they're like, oh, okay. There's just going to be a lot of applications of math. So in this right here, you know x equals 7 and x equals negative 3, and then you have this equation right here. So I think the fastest way to do it is going back to the principles of FOIL. And if you want me to make a full-length video on foiling, I absolutely will, and factoring, because this seems to mess up a lot of students. So all you have to do is, since these are what x equals, you just have to multiply it together. So you go 7 times negative 3, and the answer is A. Okay, so 14, we're going to get into some more geometry. So the lengths of corresponding sides of two similar right triangles, so similar, just a reminder, equals same angles, different sides. The hypotenuse of the smaller triangle is 20 inches long. How many inches long is the hypotenuse of the larger triangle? So let's go ahead and draw our pictures. I am by far not the best artist, so just brace for impact. I went to school for science, not art. Okay, so in these here, we have a ratio, which is great. We're going to do proportions in a second. This is the small, this is the large. This one is 20. And then we've got our ratio here. So we're just going to call this one x. So all you have to do is you go, pretty simple, you go 20 over x equals 4 over 5, and then you cross multiply. So that would be 100 equals 4x. Your x is going to be 25. I know some people can do that in their head, but for people that cannot, I just want to make sure I show the full length of that. Okay, so this one, I actually have a short video on this that's doing really well, but I'll go ahead and make sure I go over it too. So I've seen multiple of these. The amplitude of the graph of the function 1/2 cosine at 3x plus pi is shown in the standard xy coordinate plane. Okay, Please know this one for your test. It's actually really easy. When you're just looking for the amplitude, you ready for this? Just look at the front number. It's 1/2, and you got to win. Don't overthink these ones and get your free points. Okay, so this one is, I guess, a little bit more hard, but not too bad. Okay, the circle XY coordinates has a center of 3, -4, and passes through 0, 0. What is the following equation of the circle? So center is also known as h comma k. And if you have one of these graphing calculators that hasn't been wiped, I'm going to show you this one. And what you have to do, it's going to out of focus just a little bit. So all you have to do is you hit your apps, and then number 4 is conics, and then 1. And you actually have your circle formula. I'm going to write it out, but I just want to make sure you know that hack. So what you have to do is that formula is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, and they give us the center. So how we would plug this in is x minus 3 squared plus y plus 4 squared, just because that's a negative, and that is what matters. And looking at all the options, B is the only one that matters. It would look like this if the center was 0, 0. So if you're kind of wondering about how that would look, that would be the option. Okay, so then we've got number 17, and this is where I say, make sure your calculator does all the hard work, not you. Do not bother simplifying it. It'll be a waste of time. Get the decimal of this one. So all you have to do, 2 plus 63. So what you're gonna see, it's just me literally adding all these up and leave it on for the moment. But we've got 31 point, let's say 75. So you're like, why does that matter? Do I have to simplify it? Actually, not really. So what we have to do is we have to try to match it. So I'm gonna guess, let's try 7 square root of 50. That is about 49.49. So that one's wrong. Let's try 12 square root of 7. And then that's going to be the same. So the answer is C. Let that autofocus, and there we go. Okay, so a number 18, the sum of 3 positive integers is 180. The ratio of these integers is this. What is the value of the smallest of the integers? So I have a hack for you on this. These ones used to drive me crazy, and then I figured out something actually really simple. All you have to do is whenever you see the ratios and what it equals, you just slap some x's on there. So this is what it looks like. You go 5x plus 3x plus 2x equals 180, and then you just solve for x, which is going to be 10x equals 180, and then you go x equals 18, but you're not done yet because the smallest is 2. So all you have to do is 18 times 2, which equals to 36. So the answer is B. Okay, number 19 has really thrown some kids through the loop, but let's simplify it here. So Jeremy reaches into a box in the closet. The box contains 10 gloves and make up for 5 matching pairs. He picks one glove at random and puts it on, then he picks up another glove at random, so he doesn't put it back. What is the probability that he picked up a matching pair? So the easiest way to do this one is actually just labeling them by colors. It sounds cheesy, but it helps organize your brain. So if we've got 10 gloves, let's pretend we've got 2 reds, 2 yellows, 2 blues, 2 greens, and then 2 blacks. Well, we'll put BL for black. So if he, let's say he just picks out 1 green and he doesn't put it back, now he's got 9 left. The chance of him getting another green is just going to be 1/9. So the answer is A. If you're struggling with probability, please make sure you practice them. They are all over this dang test.
Okay, so we are now halfway through the math. If you like this type of content and want more, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. And also, if you want a more small group coaching or one-on-one coaching, go ahead and check our link in the bio and we will be able to support you. Now, let's get back to doing math.
There you go. Okay, for number 20, during an event, a store gave a free t-shirt to every 24th customer that entered a store and a gift certificate to every 60th customer. So we've got our 2 numbers right there. Given that 500 customers entered the store during the event, how many customers received both a free t-shirt and a gift certificate? So what this is actually doing this with this is actually multiples. And I've seen a different variation of each. This can be really confusing at first, but we've got to focus on our two numbers. So there's only a total of 500 customer every 24th. And let's go ahead and break it down from there. So if we want to just do multiples of 60, that would be the easiest, all the way up to 500. So I'm getting out my calculator. So if we go 60, 120, 180, 240, 300, 360, and then we've got 420, and then 480. And then we'll remove after, or like ignore the rest after that. So these are multiples of the 60s. And so then we have to figure out how many times it is going to overlap with the multiples of 24. So what I would do to be fast is I would just divide each of these by 24 to see if it's a normal number. So 60 divided by 24 is a decimal. 120 divided by 24 is a normal number. So I'll put a check there. 180 divided by 24 is 7.5. So not that one. 240 divided by 24 is 10. So that's a normal number. Then we've got 300 divided by 24 is not a good number. 360 divided by 24. All you're looking for these in this one is a clean number, is overlap. So then you go 420 divided by 24. That one's a decimal, and then 480 divided by 24. So since there is 4 overlaps, the answer on this one is going to be B4. So Cameron's bookshelf has 3 books with a rating of 10. So we'll put 3 books equals 10. 5 books with a rating of 100 or 100. 100, and then 2 books with a rating of 70. There are no other books on the bookshelf. What is the expected value to the nearest whole number of the rating of the book randomly selected from Cameron's bookshelf? So my first gut is like, oh man, like shouldn't it be matching these? But since none of those match these numbers, then we need to find the average. So the way that we do that is average, by the way, is the same thing as mean. So completely the same thing. So what we would do is we would go 3 times 10 equals 30, because we want to find out all the total values. And then you would go 5 times 100, which by the way is 500. And then you go 2 times 70 plus 140. And then you would add all these up. And since they're then divided by 10, since there's a total of 10 books, so 3 plus 500 plus 140 is going to equal 670. Divided by 10. So the answer on this one is C, 67. So this is a good sequence one. Number 22. The first term of a certain sequence is -10 and the second term is 1. Each subsequent term is obtained by adding the 2 immediately preceding terms, which by the way, preceding equals before. A lot of people struggle with that. What is the 5th term of the sequence? So let's kind of make a little chart. 2. And if you're asking yourself, do I have time to do this on the test? Actually, yes, because this is pretty hard to do it without that. Okay, so on number 1, they give us that as -10, and the second is 1. So you pretty much have to add immediately the 2 preceding terms. So for number 3, you just have to add -10 and 1, so that'd be -9. And for number 4, you go ahead and add 1 and -9, so that'll be -8. And then you add these 2, which is -17 for number 5. So the answer on this one is B. So which of the following values is the y value of the solution to the given system of equations? So you have a couple of ways you can do this. What you can do here is you can plug, you have what x is equal, and you can plug it in and solve. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that, and then I'm also going to go ahead and show you the calculator method. Okay, so if we set and plug it in, so we know what x equals, so then we go -4y minus 3 minus 22 equals 6y. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go -8y minus 6 minus 22 equals 6y, and then go ahead and simplify and solve down. We're making sure we're adding them to both sides. So this one, I would actually still recommend solving by hand, but sometimes it actually makes more sense to plug in these ones in a calculator. I want you to see how to do it just in case it makes more sense on the test. Okay, so this is going to be the calculator version over here, but the answer here is B. So that being said, what you can do is you can enter it into your graphing calculator, and I'm going to show you how. But to do that, you have to make it a clean y equals. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this one over here, and we're going to negative 4y minus 6 equals x, and we're going to set it equal to y, which would be negative 4y equals x plus 3, and then we're going to go y equals to negative 1/4, and you're going to see I write parentheses for a reason in a second, x, then minus 3 divided by 4. And then we also have to simplify this one here. Like I said, this time it's a little more complicated, but other times it actually makes more sense. So if we're going to solve for y, we already have y by itself. 20x minus 22 equals 6y. And then we'll go ahead and just divide by 6. I'm going to leave things in unsimplified fractions because you actually, for this type of stuff, you don't need to simplify. So these are the two we're going to enter in to our TI-84. Okay, so I'm going to put it right here. We're going to watch the autofocus because sometimes it goes a little bit crazy. So what I've done is I've actually already pre-entered these in, but the key is you have to make sure you put the negative number. So you put it in the y equals, and then what you do, it's pretty simple. So you go graph, you make sure that you see your intersections, and then you go second calc, and then you click intersect, and then you just pretty much move it around till it's about the intersection, and you keep hitting enter just to make sure it's closed. And then the answer, and it's a little hard to see on the screen now, but the answer is showing y equals negative 2. So 2 ways to do it. I think it's always good to have multiple options in your toolkit. Number 24 is also when you have multiple options, you can do that whole like slope intercept form or solve for slope and go from there. But what I think is actually easier is like plug and chug or guess and check. Let's go ahead. My pen just broke, so I'm gonna switch that out. So what I mean by that is you're going to plug in to see which works. And I always start with the zeros and the x's because it makes it easier. So what we're going to do is like to find one of these equations, all of these have to perfectly solve, but you don't have to make this overly complicated. So let's go ahead and test the one with the 0 right here. So if we test A, we put in 0 for x. And then on A, we check and it once you solve it, it's still going to be g of x equals negative 8. So A is looking promising. So let's go ahead. But it would also work for B on that one, but it would not work for C. So we can go ahead and eliminate C. But it still would work for D. So now we've got a couple of options. So now we have to narrow it down even more. So what we can do is check this first term. So whenever we put in negative 2 for x, it's got to equal 0. So let's check A. So if we put in negative 2 for x, that would be 4 minus 8, which is equal to negative 4. A is not correct. And then if we test B, negative 2, negative 8, that's going to equal negative 10, which doesn't match up here. So it's not B, so it's likely going to be D, but let's check. So we go 2, negative 2 squared minus 8. And then what that is going to equal is negative 2 squared. So that's going to end up being 8 minus 8. So the answer on this one is D. A little bit faster of a method. It actually takes even less time when I'm not pausing and talking. Okay, doing number 25 in 3, 2, 1. So the vertex angle, which means the top, of an isosceles triangle is 40. What is the measure of the base angle? So let's define terms. An isosceles triangle, I'm just going to I, equals 2 sides and 2 angles are the same, which is really important to know. So this is the vertex angle is the different one. So that one's going to be 40. And then what is the measure of the base angle? So then we have two base angles. And all we have to do is we go x plus 40 equals 180. And then we solve for x, 2x equals 140. X is going to equal 70. Boom, the answer is 70. But you got to know certain like geometry rules to be able to remember that. Starting in 3, 2, 1. So if you're feeling deja vu on number 26, you're not alone. It's actually very similar to another problem, just slightly different. Okay, equilateral triangle is inscribed in circle O as shown. What is the degree measure of minor arc BC? So you have to know equilateral means that it's all equal. And most students know the equilateral triangles pretty well. So then you've got minor arc BC, which is right here. And this one is pretty simple. Since you only have like 3 arcs and that's 1/3, you just go 360 degrees divided by 3, which is going to be 120. So the answer is C, 120. Don't overcomplicate the geometry. Whenever a student first sees these type of problems, they tend to panic, but my thing is like, you got to draw it out. So on a scale model where one coordinate represents 1 mile, it's drawn. Angela's house is at 4, -3. Ella's house is at 4,7. Troy's house is at -2,7. And Y's house, and I'm mispronouncing that, is -2, -3. Which of the following is the closest to the area in square miles of the rectangle whose vertices are real location of the 4 houses? Woo Nelly. So let's just plot it out. So on this one, we have Angela's house is at 4, -3, and we're going to put A. And then Ella's house is at 4, and then all the way up to here to 7. I know it's not perfectly drawn to scale, but that's okay. Troy is at -2, 7. And then Y's house is at -2, -3. So all you have to do is now we've got a little bit of a shape, which is nice. Which is the closest to the area in square miles of the rectangle? So we pretty much need to find the length and the width. So if we go from here to here, you don't even need the distance formula. This is -3, this is 7, so it's going to be 10. And then if you go from here to here, is you've got -2 right here, and then you've got 4, that's going to be 6. So all you have to do is 10 times, let me put that in focus, 6, and the answer is going to be 60. All right, please, 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 no line behavior. I know that's obnoxious, but it's important. So number 28, let the function f be defined as f of x equals -9x squared in the xy coordinate plane. The graph y equals f of x undergoes a transformation that the result of the graph of f of x equal or -4 under the transformation. So all it's saying is what happened. So all you're doing is you got a -4 right there. And since it's at the end, that's going to be an up or it's going to be a down. If it was within like a parentheses, that's going to be different movement, but we're just focusing on up and down. So all this one is A, shifted down 4 units. But if you do not know your line behavior, I'm going to promise you're going to struggle on multiple questions on this test. Okay, 29, SOHCAHTOA. Another thing to absolutely know. So SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAHTOA. If you're interested in a full length on SOHCAHTOA, let me know. I probably should make one at this point. I have to explain this so much. S stands for sine, cosine, and tangent, and then this is only with right triangles. So O stands for opposite, H stands for hypotenuse, and then A stands for adjacent, which, by the way, adjacent just means like, I just call it like next door. Okay, so which of the following expressions equals the height of the tree? So what we have to do is our focus angle is 40. And then this right here is an opposite. And what we are also given, that is an adjacent. So we're thinking, okay, which is the opposite over adjacent? And that's tangent. So we've got tangent of 40 equals, we'll call this x over 18. But we are not done because do you see any of those options? Nope. So what you have to do is you move that 18 over here. So the answer is A. Number 30, as shown on the number line, between 0 and 8 is divided into 6 segments, the equal length from A through E. Which of the following statements about square root of 8 is true? So all this is saying is that this is 0 all the way through 8, and then it's divided into 6. So let's kind of ballpark these and do it actually in decimals. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, I know that's not the real number there, but we've got 6. So I would actually go 8 divided by 6 first, which each of these segments is about 1.3. So that would be 1.3 really on A. And then B is going to be 2.3. C is going to be 3.6. Obviously, these are very, very ballpark. And then D is going to be, should be about like 4.9. Oh, nope, there's an error there. That should be 2.6. This should be 3.9. And then D is going to be 5.2. I hope you find this encouraging for someone who does really well in math. We all make mistakes, but it's good. You got to be able to find the error there. Okay, so which of the statements about square root of 8 is true? So if we plug in square root of 8 in our calculator, it's about like 2.8. So let's see which one is going to be the most true. So if we found like A is 1.3, B is 2.6, and that's 2.8, then honestly, I think the best one, well, A's, it's not D, it's not C. And then you've got between A and B and C, and the best answer is going to be D. Okay, let's go ahead and do 31, and there's actually not that much math to it. This right here is a probability thing. You don't have to know it too deeply, but you've got to know like 1 equals like 100% chance. Okay, so Dion often flies his kite. He can only fly his kite on days with wind. He does not fly his kite on every day with wind. For any given day, let A be when there's wind and B be when Dion flies his kite. So pretty much it's saying like A equals wind, and then B is when it actually happens. But he doesn't fly his kite on every day with wind. So which one can be true? So like on a day where pretty much it's windy and he's flying, 0 is wrong because it's not a 0% chance. 1.5 is too big. 100% is not the case because it says not every day. So the only answer is B. Super weird, but super important. Okay, so with question number 32, whenever you see crazy stuff like this, you need to think of simplifying. A lot of people panic when they see these. And kind of a rule of thumb is it's normally going to look like either C or D. So if you have to guess, at least tend to guess there. So let's write this out a little better. Negative 3x cubed plus 12x, x cubed minus x squared minus 6x. And let's go ahead and simplify. So what we can pull out of this top one is we can pull out a negative 3x. And then from there, we're going to simplify down. So if we pull out that would be an x squared. And then that would turn into a minus 4. And then this one, we can pull out an x. And so that would be x squared minus x. And that would be minus 6. And then we'll simplify it down again. And then this will be negative 3x, x minus 2, x plus 2. And then this one would be x, parentheses, xx, and then this would be minus 3 and plus 2. So this is not a fast problem by any means, but this is kind of the way that I've mostly seen it work out. So what you have to do from this point is kind of a couple things. So one, you cross that out, those can cancel out there. And then you can go ahead and cancel these x's out. And what this will look like is that will be -3, x minus 2, and then on the bottom, it will be x minus 3, which in regards to this, it will be -3x plus 6, which you'll have to flip-flop around, and then that's x minus 3. And then the answer that matches this is going to be, whoops, sorry about that. This one's going to be D, not C. Okay, so for these type of questions, whenever you see roots of a polynomial, that is how many times it's going to intersect that x-axis. So you have 0, you have 2, and then you also have -5. And whenever I'm seeing 3, that's telling me I need 3 x's. So what I'm going to go ahead and eliminate is A, and then D is not looking promising at all either. And so our roots are going to be reflecting this. So you will need an x, and that's going to be your x equals 0. And then you will also need, with this to be a positive, that's going to be x minus 2. And then that's going to be x plus 5. So the only option for this one is 0. If you are really, really stuck, you can type these in to the graph on your graphing calculator and look for those roots. That is going to take a long time, so it's really helpful to be able to figure this out as you go. Okay, so on number 34, you have 3x minus y, and then x plus y equals 5 over 8, and then what is xy? Which honestly is just a lot going on. So what we need to do is we need to simplify and go ahead and get into those xy terms, which you can kind of do from a couple of different ways here. What I'm going to do with this is I'm actually going to try cross multiplying it. I said, I do think there's more than one way to do this, but I'm going to try it this way. So let's go ahead and cross multiply and simplify down. So that'd be 5x plus y. And then that would be equal 8, 3x minus y, 5x plus 5y equals 24x minus 8y. All these are a little bit interesting. So let's go ahead and simplify and get x's and y's on the same side. So I'm going to try to get, let's go this way. So if we put all the x's on this side, that would be 5 minus 24, which would equal -19x. And then if you move that 5y over here, minus 5y, that's going to be 8 plus 5 is going to be -13y. So then you pretty much are looking for what's going to match it. The negatives are going to cancel out. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting from here. But the only numbers that have that 19 and 13 is going to be B. I wouldn't overthink this one too much. I would just be looking for similar numbers. And then we can go back and double check that we did all our math right. And yeah, everything's looking good. Okay, so on 35, let the slope of 3x plus 2y equals 5 be m1, and then the slope be m2. Which of the following is true? So we need to, so there's kind of like two ways that you can do this. I'm going to do this in a way that most students are going to remember, and I'm going to put it in y equals mx plus b form. As you go into these last 10 questions, they're going to be heavy applications of math. So let's go ahead and solve for y. So that would be 2y equals -3x plus 5. Y equals, and I'm putting this one over here. And then that would be -3 over 2x plus 5 over 2. And then for this one over here, that would be 4y equals -6x plus 7. Y equals -6 over 4x plus 7 over 4. So yeah, we got a little bit of a mess here. So let's figure out which statement is going to be true. So one thing to think about is that this is not simplified. So -6 over 4, which would be the same as -3 over 2. So that being said, it looks like both of our slopes equal. So the answer on this one at 35 is A. Okay, for number 36, you probably haven't seen a piecewise function in a while, but that's okay. Just try to follow the instructions. So your first thing is you have an f of g function down here. So you need to start with g is -1 and plugging that in first. So let's look at our g of x right here. So g of x is -1. And if we're following our rules for x being -1, so on this one right here is where I would land because that's just when x is greater than -1. And so let's plug in that -1 for this right here. So it's -1 because it's absolute value plus 7, and that becomes a positive 1. So that's going to equal 8. And then that is what we are going to use over here to plug into our f of x. So we take this 8, and then we put it in this one because that's what category it's fitting. And then we go 1 minus 8, which is going to equal -7. And so the answer is going to be B. Okay, so on 37, you need to find where pretty much these 2 points intersect. You can do this kind of complicated, or you can kind of do this easily. The key is that pretty much for the intersection, it's got to go cleanly and work out perfectly in both of those lines. And I always test kind of an easier line to see if it's going to work. So let's test A in f of x equals 4x plus 7. And then, so if you plug in A's points for f of x, then you just pretty much have to see if it works. So it's got to be equal to -1, and then you go 4 times -2 plus 7, -1 equals -8 plus 7. So A works for f of x, so let's go ahead and see if it works for g of x. And so that would be -2 squared plus 2 plus 1. And what the goal is, it needs to equal that -1. To be honest, these ones are never pretty. And that's okay. It's going to be -8 minus 22, and that would be plus 1. So because on A, it does not solve and equal -1, A is going to be wrong. And then what you have to do is you pretty much have to rinse and repeat all of these, but your g of x might be your better determinant. I always test easy points. So let's go ahead and test D and that g of x, see if that works. So what we can do is we will plug in 13. So we go -2, 13 squared plus 11 times 13 plus 1. And for it to work, it has to equal -1 for y. And on D, it does not work for the g of x term. So likely it's going to be one of our more complicated numbers, which is always fun. So let's go ahead and do a couple spot checks. So let's see if we can check. Actually, I kind of like B. So let's go ahead and check B for the g of x. So then we go -2. I'm going to go 1.5 because it's just a little bit easier. Squared plus 11, 1.5 plus 1. And the goal is it has to equal 13. And then that one equals 13 on g of x. So then you have to test it in the other f of x there. X plus 7. And so what you would do is you would go 4 times 1.5. It looks like it's going to work out fine, which equals 13. And B is the answer. I've had some look at my graphing calculator doing this before, but I feel like students do make a little bit more errors on it. It doesn't take too long, and this is actually kind of my slow way of doing it because I'm writing it out. A lot of this I just do on my calculator. Okay, so number 38, we've got a little bit more going on. Let's refocus. There you go. A tourism organization randomly selected 100 tourists finishing their summer visit to Spain. The organization asked them how many cities they had toured in the country. The table shows the results. Based on the data for the population of tourists that visited Spain during the summer, what is the best estimate of the mean number of cities toured? So we've got a lot going on. So it's got 100 tourists. And then it's also got the number of cities toured. So then we need to break this down. So we need to go 10 times 1 to equal 10. And then we need to go 2 cities times 40 tourists to equal 80. And then we need to go 3 times 50 tourists to equal 150. And then we're going to add these all together. So we go 10 plus 80 plus 150. And we are all going to divide that by 100 tourists. So the answer on this one is going to be C, 2.4. Okay, so this is when the graphing calculator prevails against all of these. Honestly, you just put it exactly into your calculator. So let's do it. So what I'm going to do is on my TI-84 plus, I'm going to go 7 plus 4i, which I, by the way, is by the period. And then squared. And so what it looks like, and I know it's hard to see sometimes with this dot cam. Let's see if it'll focus. This one's not going to focus at the moment. So I hit enter, and I honestly just get 33.56i, which is the answer. The moral of the story is graphing calculator. And I swear by Texas Instruments. I am not sponsored by Texas Instruments, but honestly, I think they make the best ones. On number 40, the product of two complex numbers, x and y, is a real number that is irrational. Which of the following statements cannot be true? So I always joke that, let's refocus. So I always joke that irrational problems or numbers are numbers with problems or issues. One thing I always remember is pi. It just goes on literally forever. So I always kind of get an example in my head. Which of the statements cannot be true? So if x and y are multiplying, if it is a real number that is irrational, you can focus on your example being pi. So thinking through that, if x times y equals something crazy like pi, here's a couple of things that are possible. Which of the statements cannot be true? So x and y are rational. Don't love that. We'll go back to it in a second. So x and y are imaginary. Maybe. That one can actually be true. The product of x and y is square root of 2. And then the product of x and y is negative. So the negative doesn't matter. Square root of 2 is fine. A is going to be the answer of x and y are rational, because there's no way you can use two rational numbers to make an irrational. So number 41 is an annoying problem I personally don't like. I do not love logs, but we're going to survive this one. So find the real solution of this equation. So what you need to do is you need to divide by 3. We'll move that from there. And so that will be E of x equals 12 divided by 3 is 4. So now we're at this point, and we need to rewrite it. That ln is going to be pretty much a natural log. And what this is going to be written to, and this is a lot of like memory things, is ln 4. Okay, so this is actually a problem that is less complicated than it looks. You got to think about percentages of a triangle. When I first saw this, I made this way too complicated. Then I figured out it was actually a lot easier than I thought originally. So figure ABC, a right isosceles triangle is inscribed in circle O with a radius of 10 centimeters. What is the length of arc AB shown as the thick curved line, which is like here to here? So here's the thing. You don't need to know most of this except how big the circumference is of this whole circle. So if we know that the radius is 10 and we've got this, and then we know a circumference is going to just be C equals pi D. D is going to be 20, so it'll be 20 pi. And then because this little section is a fourth, all you have to do is divide it by 4. And so the answer is D, 5. So 43 is a really easy trap, but if you plug in real numbers, it helps. So it took Sam X minutes to bike the D miles from home to work, returning home on the same route, Sam Y minutes. On the way home, his average speed was 2 times his average speed on the way to work. Which of the following equations gives Y in terms of X? So you have to remember that X is equal to minutes. So this right here, because it's a 2 times thing, like B and C are just gone. And then the temptation is to put D, Y equals 2X, but then you have to remember that he's going twice as fast, so it's taking him half the amount of time. So the answer on this one is A, divided by 2. Okay, number 44 can easily be number 44 can easily be defined as a problem child. It's annoying, but let's go ahead and do some process of elimination first. So you have these two hyperbolas, which are drawn here, which of course not labeled any points in this graph. What is the following equations is an ellipse that intersects all 4 vertices of these hyperbolas. So right off the bat, eliminate Z, that's a circle. And then you got to start checking and figuring out kind of like what is going on in each of these points. So you have to figure out pretty much where are your intersects on X and then where are your intersections on Y. If you just straight up eyeball it and you're really like running out of time in a pickle, what I noticed like right off the bat, and you can actually assume things about pictures on the ACT, is that your Y is bigger and that you should have a bigger number under the Y to stretch out that pretty much that ellipse, which by the way is an oval. So if you just straight up eyeball it, you would eliminate B and C because the bigger number would be under Y. But if you want to be a little bit more accurate, and by the way, regardless, that works because the answer is A, what you can do is you go into your calculator, and on the TI-84 Plus, it's standard to have under apps for is conics. And then they have different equations of like a hyperbola and an ellipse. And what you can do is you can pretty much plug those in. And it's a little unclear on this angle, but what you plug those in, it's going to perfectly match where those ellipses or in those hyperbolas go, and it's going to perfectly line it up. But a lot of the ACT has little tiny little back hacks just like this one, just by looking at the picture and knowing that you need a bigger number under Y, making the answer A. So number 45, last question of the math test. If you're seeing this and you're like, I hate inverse functions, don't worry, me too. The good news is on Max, I've seen another one of these before, like one question on the test, and honestly, it's not something you need to like deeply study unless you're trying to go into the 30s, but in general, it can't hurt. So let's do it. So all you have to do with the inverse functions is you're swapping out your Y and your X. And on this one, I'm going to rewrite so we can see it a little bit better. So we go f of X equals 3 to X minus 1. And then to do the little fun little inverse, we're going to swap it out. And remember, our f of X equals to Y. So I'm going to put X here equals 3 to Y minus 1. And then what you have to do is a little bit of a hot mess, but you've got to cube it because we need to cancel out those. So that'd be X cubed equals 2Y minus 1. And then you have to solve for y. And so then you go x cubed plus 1 equals 2y. And then you divide by 2, making the answer C.
Okay, so if you learned something new in this video, I would love to hear about it in the comments. And that being said, just a reminder, if you enjoy this type of video and want more like this, let us know and go ahead and click that subscribe button. If you need more support, our group coaching, we have our link in the bio, and we also have one-on-one services as well. Regardless, good luck on your ACT math test, and make sure you fill us in how it went.